So don't go too far. The Synod Vice President, Jennifer Slagle Peck, currently is the highest elected lay officer in our Synod, and she is alongside 65 other vice presidents in the entire church, in our denomination. The work of the VP involves making sure that the business of the Synod is well managed and remaining in healthy relationship with the bishop so that together they can faithfully attend unique contextual needs within the Synod they've been entrusted to serve. I remain blessed to have you with me. I remain honored by your wisdom and your presence. And I can tell you wholeheartedly that Jennifer loves this church and she loves you. And so every decision that we make together as council is motivated by love. And so thank you, Jennifer. I look forward to your report.
Thank you. A good afternoon and greetings on behalf of your Synod Council. I'm excited to be with you here today and to share just a little bit about how the Synod Council has been working to build community and seek justice this past year. Since last year's assembly, we are thrilled that another cohort of discussion groups have completed the Sacred Ground series on race and faith. The Synod Council has actively discussed issues of justice, including how to make meaningful land acknowledgements to honor the original occupants of the land we now inhabit. We worked through and concluded the racial equity audit this spring, and we launched a Reconciling in Christ team just last month. All of these actions have been focused both on how we can make systemic change within our institution and how we can bring people closer together to build authentic community. But of course, none of these actions mean our work is done. When we began the racial equity audit last year, we knew it would be hard, and we knew it would not be the end of our journey. There's no easy list of actions to fix all of the inequities in our society. And the fact that we operate out of a layered and complicated institution means that before anybody can understand who we are, we have to consult a glossary of terms. It's in your packet. But while the audit wasn't easy, and while we don't get to achieve racial equity off of our to-do list and just move on, we should all be proud that our Synod was the first ELCA Synod to engage in a racial equity audit, and proud of the fact that while we can at times get discouraged, we are not defeated by difficult work. We came through the audit stronger in terms of the strength of our relationships with each other and in terms of the clarity of our path going forward. The audit was helpful because it shined a light on some things we already sensed, such as that not everyone in our pews feels entirely safe. And some of our siblings have struggled with whether or not they belong enough to consider whether they should even stay. We used the information we gathered from the audit to identify 5 focal areas to keep top of mind as we engage in strategic planning going forward. And last December, we formed an incredibly strong strategic planning team with team members who are both passionate about matters of justice and experienced in each of the 5 areas we are focused on. The team met several times over the last few months and has identified goals for the coming year. I'm excited to see where they will lead us. While systemic changes are critical to achieve equity, the audit also reminded us how just a few people can make a big difference. For instance, it only took the small number of people who are on our candidacy committee to recognize that the questions we were posing to candidates did not take into account the diverse cultural backgrounds of our candidates, which made some of them uncomfortable and put them at a disadvantage. The committee recognized the problem. They paused to consider how to address the issue, and ultimately they came up with better questions. Our candidacy process and our Synod is better off for these efforts. We have also seen and felt the power of seemingly one-off daily interactions. A parishioner who tells her pastor she isn't interested in more of those people coming in the doors, or who doesn't recognize someone's gender identity. When we question the decision of another due to mistrust caused by racial bias, these interactions can be quick, and they may not be done with malice, but they cut deep and they leave a lasting impact. We are a body of people whose relationships with each other and with Jesus is central to who we are. So naturally, the way in which we treat each other and the way we treat people who are not us is where the rubber meets the road. We often have the power to make someone's day or to crush their spirit simply by the way we speak to them. And because the way we interact with each other is so often impacted by individual and cultural biases, we must seek awareness of how these biases impact us, and we must work to avoid the traps that we can fall into when we are not aware or being mindful. In these instances, it often isn't about the intent. It is about the impact. So the more we engage our curiosity, and the more we lean into offerings like sacred ground, the more likely we will be able to take steps toward equity and justice. Now, this past fall, my family and I developed a close friendship with a neighbor. The first time this family came over to dinner all together, the kids were exploring the whole house, so we ended up giving everyone a tour. Later, as the kids played elsewhere and the adults sat around our kitchen table, our new friend said, "I have a personal question for you. Is that okay?" So we held our breaths and we said, "Sure, what's up?" He said, "I noticed you have a lot of rainbows around your house, and I was wondering what the story is with that." We exhaled and we chuckled about how we didn't actually realize that we had an unusually large number of rainbows around. But more importantly, we shared that we have lots of messages of inclusion around our house because while Dave and I are cisgender straight people, we are so closely connected with the church that we wanted to be clear, and I mean very clear, that we are open and affirming of all people. We also want our kids to know that as they grow up, we will love them no matter what. And they can talk to us about anything. I knew I would cry. So a few months later, Harper came home from school and was telling Dave about her day. That day, one of her classmates had come up to her with a question. He said he knew her dad was a pastor, and given that he is gay, he wondered, what does your dad think about that? Now, this is 5th grade in a public school. I didn't think the kids were talking about faith, but apparently this kid knows that Harper's dad is a pastor, and thankfully, Harper didn't have to hesitate to say her dad is totally fine with that. Her friend said, "I wish more pastors were like that. I wish more pastors were like that." As Harper relayed the story to Dave and later to me, we were so relieved that we had made it clear to Harper that all of us are beloved children of God, full stop. I don't actually know which of Harper's classmates had this conversation with her, and I don't know what this child's experience has been with church or other religious institutions. But somehow, in this child's 10 or 11 years of life, he has already realized the world is not entirely safe for him. And what's worse, he can't be sure if the church is either. The uncertainty that this child feels and the pain that surely causes him illustrates why it is so important for our congregations and for our synod to be focused on matters of justice and explicit about who we are and what we believe. We believe all of our siblings, whether gay, straight, cisgender, transgender, Black, white, Indigenous, disabled, are beloved children of God, just as they are, worthy of love and belonging. I want this to be so clear in the way we live that we don't actually have to say it out loud. But the reality is we need to be explicit, both so that people can feel safe around us and so that we can be reminded of who we are called to be. The importance of these interactions is why the Synod Council drafted the welcome statement that we affirmed earlier today, to reaffirm our reconciling in Christ status and to incorporate the expanded commitment to be an anti-racist institution. The resolution that we voted on earlier affirms this welcome statement and also encourages each of you and your congregations to explore the reconciling in Christ process. That means that if your congregation is not RIC currently, we invite you to just begin conversations about what it would mean to become RIC. If you are already RIC, we invite you to reaffirm your commitment and to think creatively about how you can expand your welcome even further. Just like the racial equity audit, our welcoming of all people is not a one and done situation. We must continually strive toward becoming more welcoming and more equitable. If you are wondering whether this commitment matters or whether being a vocal ally matters, please remember Harper's classmate. I wish more pastors were like. He might as well have said, I wish people who profess to know God's love would share that love with me. For indeed, that is what we are called to do, no matter a person's identity. We are all beloved children of God exactly as we are, and we have been practicing and training for such a time as this. As the old song reminds us, they will know we are Christians by our love. Let it be so. So before I conclude my report today, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who's been involved in the work of the Synod this past year. So if you are on Synod Council, if you could please stand so we can recognize you. It's you people. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing many Saturday mornings with us, for listening with excitement to the amazing work going around the Synod, and for dreaming up new and creative ways to pray and play, and to support all of the members of the Synod. If you are on a Synod committee, a table, or a team, please stand. The candidacy committee, any of these. Thank you. A huge thank you to all of you. The work of the Synod is carried out through each of these groups, and our mission could not be attained without your commitment and engagement. And if you are a member of the Synod, if you have attended a Synod-wide event, shown up for a pre-assembly conference meeting, or you are at the assembly today or online watching the assembly, I invite you to please rise. Get a little stretch. So look around. Each of you are the Synod. You are called to be here in this moment, to engage in the business of the Synod, and to share God's love today and every day going forward. Thank you for responding to that call, and I will give all of you a round of applause. Thank you. And finally, to the Synod staff, thank you for working day and night for us. So often you are called upon to help the rest of us navigate very difficult situations. We thank you for showing up time and time again as you bring a wealth of experience, perspective, and focus. Your work matters and you matter to us. Thank you. As I move into the second half of my term as your vice president, I look forward to continuing to build community with each of you and working to fulfill our baptismal covenant to strive for peace and justice throughout the world. Here ends my report.